It's a rare day when I find myself applauding Barnaby Joyce. But in the wake of the One Nation victory in the Farrer by-election, Barnaby has urged Australians to do something very interesting.
I've tried to encapsulate so many issues in one, and it would possibly be this. At the end of the Malaysian Peninsula is a little island. It has no coal, no oil, no gas, no cattle, no irrigation, no uranium, yet it's called Singapore. It has a GDP that is about a quarter to a third of the size of Australia. This is the path that is taking us away from being the Singapore of it multiplied so many times because we have the resources.
Barnaby's right. Singapore is one of the most fascinating places in the world. An island that was among the poorest places in Southeast Asia is in 2026 one of the richest places in the world. But true to form, Barnaby didn't provide any detail, but he did keep banging on, even in his budget analysis.
If you have a look, there's a thing called the Malaysian Peninsula. At the end, there's a swampy island called Singapore. It's got no oil, no gas, no...
You've heard it before, but this time Barnaby shares Singapore's secret.
You know why? Because the resources between people's ears.
Barnaby's right again. Singapore is very invested in the quality of what sits between people's ears. I'd like to tell you a few things that Barnaby didn't about the Singapore economy. The first thing is that it's one of the most government-directed economies in the world. It's a highly activist government. The Singapore government is the architect, if you like, of all the major directions that the economy takes. The second thing is Singapore is a great provider of housing, healthcare, education, a very proud provider of all those things. The third thing is that Singapore is very serious about net zero, very serious about decarbonisation, including a carbon tax. Singapore's education system produces better outcomes than ours. Singapore's public transport is better than any city in Australia. People like Barnaby tend to get excited by Singapore's very low tax rates. But there's a very big difference between running a tiny island state and running a massive country with an agricultural and mining economic base. Even Singapore's low income taxes look a little different at closer inspection. Barnaby might be less impressed by the fact that more than 70% of Singaporeans live in HDB or Housing Development Board provided flats. It's a Singapore take on public housing that usually transitions to ownership. This is what they looked like in the 1970s when Singapore's miracle was getting underway, and this is what they look like today. You can take for granted that the public transport, schooling and other infrastructure will be top-notch. In Singapore, teachers are respected, enjoy prestige in society, and their salaries, healthcare and housing benefits put them well ahead of their Australian counterparts. There are big taxes on big cars too. It might cost $200,000 to put one of Barnaby's beloved utes on the road in Singapore, and that's before you pay for the car or its annual registration. He mightn't like the fact that EVs enjoy generous subsidies and there's a road user charge too. But this hyper-capitalist city does some really interesting things that really are worth checking out. Singapore has massive inequality problems like pretty much every developed country now. But there are cultural and policy settings that minimise the risk of the kind of housing crisis that we have here in Australia. There are plenty of things about Singapore that wouldn't sit well with Australians, but there are lots of things worth taking a close look at too. Looking forward to hearing some of Barnaby's Singapore inspiration in One Nation policy. If Barnaby Joyce has prompted Australians to start looking at our region and trying to understand our region, then that's a good thing. Thank you, Barnaby. And thank you for stopping by Inner West Ranter. Check out the blog over at innerwestranter.com.au.